Hello, Kris here, Green Sabre, GODTHRYMM, CROWSBLOOD, Doom Telly time, episode 60, I've made notes for this one, 68, thank you for joining me once again. Okay, the year is 1988 for this episode, but before we get started on that one, just a very quick update. Green Sabre, no further updates. We're going to be, our first rehearsal in the new place will be September. Second weekend of September, I think, or it might be anyway, whichever one it is, we'll be in, so very, very excited. I also have a couple of new riffs on the go in the background as well, so I will share them. I won't mention them anymore here because I've not shared them with the lads yet. So lads, next rehearsal I've got some new tunes for you. Green Sabre, CROWSBLOOD, I'm recording this on the Sunday as we speak, so CROWSBLOOD tomorrow night, next rehearsal with vocals again. Very excited, love a bit of the CROWSBLOOD rehearsals, bringing the metal to Bradford. So yeah, ongoing, getting the tune sorted for what will be album recording, hopefully at the end of the year, but worst case scenario, the turn of the new year. But yeah, the year is fucking off faster than you can believe, quite honestly. So yeah, we're already virtually into September. So anyway, crazy times. But yeah, get in there and yeah, rehearsal Monday night. GODTHRYMM, last rehearsal. In fact, I'll be setting off there in about an hour as it stands. So yes, GODTHRYMM final rehearsal before our little 4-day tour down south. Again, just a reminder, I'll be linking to the latest update, which is me fucking waffling away, I think on the GODTHRYMM channel, but there'll be a link to it down below. Yeah, Brighton, Ipswich, Bristol, Plymouth, can't wait, it's going to be amazing. So yeah, last rehearsal for that shortly, so get myself all prepped for that. I don't feel I'm quite as prepped as normal, but anyway, everything should be fine. So yeah, all good. Band updates, right? Okay, let's crack on with this. 1988, and again continuing with my series, the fantastic Metal Mickey shout out that started with his top 6 and glaring omissions from each year throughout the decade of all of the 80s Metal Mickey did. I'm starting from 1987, which is where my metal journey began. So I'm going through 87 through 96, that'll be then, won't it? Or is it 97 I'm going to? I might just do like anyway, regardless of whatever it is. 97 I'm fucking struggling with. I have to say, straight off the bat, metal had died on its arse at that point. So this part of me wants to do the video for that reason, to just sort of show you what a fucking mess metal was back in the mid to late 90s, really. There wasn't a lot happening. So anyway, let's get on with this video. 1988 and my top 6 and glaring omissions of 1988. Very much like the last one that I did, 1987, that upset some of the GNR fans. So apologies for the Axl Rose crew, but I stand by my decision on that one. I feel it's one of the most overrated albums of all time. Don't misunderstand me though. Appetite for Destruction isn't shit. It's not a shit album. I don't know if I made that clear enough in the last video. It is a decent album. I just think it's hugely overrated. Overrated. I'm a big Beatles fan. I must clarify this. The Beatles, once they started taking drugs, because all that fucking shaky heady la-di-da fucking nonsense that they did before 1965, not interested at all. Rubber Soul, Revolver. But the point I'm getting to here in a roundabout fashion is Sgt. Pepper's, decent album, one of the most overrated of all time. It's not even in the Beatles' top 3 for me, personally. But anyway, so that is a point I was trying to make with Appetite for Destruction. Great album, yeah. It meant loads to me back then. Overrated as fuck, and that's why it was my glaring omission. So, 1988, I've promised I'm going to start this 3 fucking times now. But anyway, let's crack on. So, without further ado, or ado, my top 6 of 1988, and again, like 1987, it's going to be a little generic. Some obvious candidates on here, but they all meant a lot to me. Like I say, this year was seismic for me, really. So, my number 6 is Slayer's South of Heaven. I absolutely adored this, and this was a truly fucking brain-melting moment when I first heard Slayer. And I heard this album before Raining Blood, I should add. This was just out when I'd heard them, so yeah. What an album. I mean, they're crushing, just crushing. There's so many great riffs on it. And possibly, it's very hard to say, but possibly my favourite Slayer song of all time is on this record, Ghosts of War. It's just a phenomenal record. Look at him on there. Look at Kerry before he went all shaved head tattoos. The man. Jeff Hanneman. I was always a Jeff guy. But, yeah, absolutely seismic record. And for me, Slayer's second best record. I've not done a Slayer ranking yet. My favourite's Raining Blood, of course. This comes in second with Seasons a very, very close third. But yeah, this is right up there. So my number 6 of 1988 is Slayer's South of Heaven. My number 5, and one of my favourite records of this band of all time. It is Iron Maiden's final good album. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. Absolutely fantastic record. It's banger after banger after banger. But there are some sort of deep cuts for me, which are the best ones on here. For example, the title track, Seventh Son. The Clairvoyant. What's the other one? Evil That Men Do. Can I Play Her Madness? I Can Take or Leave. Moonchild's great. Infinite Dreams. But anyway, I mean, it's the whole package as well. It's the music, the artwork that perfectly goes with it. Sensational record and worthy of number 5. Could be higher, but as you will see, there are so many great albums from this year. That 5, I think, is a justified spot. Again, this was the Maiden album that wasn't quite out when I got into them. Or was about to come out. We were very close anyway. I got into Maiden, as I've said many times before, from the Live After Death album that a mate at school stuck on a 90-minute Max L cassette for me, and I never looked back. But I love this record. Maybe slightly for nostalgia reasons, because like I say, it was that year that I got into them that this came out, so it was the most relevant thing at the time. And the last good album that they did, for me, Maiden, I've done a Maiden ranking. You can go back and watch it. The video's in my videos feed. But Maiden have done, for me personally, nothing of any note after this record. Yeah, there's been some tracks here and there, but no consistently good album since this. And I stand by that. So my number 5 is Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. My number 4, and the first album I ever bought on vinyl, and this is my copy of it. One of the few that survived my depressing story of my old vinyl collection, but it is Metallica's, again, you could argue their last great album as well, and Justice for All. I mentioned on the last one because the Garage Days EP came at my number 1 for 1987, and this is coming in at my number 4. Now, I'm not saying there's that much of a difference between them. There was more good stuff for me came out in 88 over 87. So, but everyone talks about the production. Yeah, the bass could be a little higher on it. Blah blah blah. I think it's fine. I think it kind of works with this record. Some of the song structures are a little long-winded and overbearing, but there's some absolute fucking monsters on it. And I think Metal Mickey might have said that he thought it was the weakest song on here, but it's my favourite. To Live Is To Die, the instrumental. I think it's fucking magnificent. And it almost feels like a doom metal track to me. There is so much doom in that track, and I think that's why I love it. But there's so many bangers on this record. I've got my little ticket stub there from the first time I ever saw them at Wembley Arena way back in 1990. They were on the back end of this tour. They'd come back round because they were on tour for about 15 years on this fucking record or whatever it was. But my number 4, Metallica's last great record. The Black Album's all right. That's a discussion for another time. But this is the last great one that they did. And Justice for All. My number 3 from 1988. And yes, I do rate this higher than what you have just seen, than the 2 big 4 that you have just seen. It is Megadeth's So Far, So Good, So What. And my number 3 from 1988. I've spoken about this record on many occasions, but I just think it's fabulous. And yes, I can just about tolerate the cover of Anarchy in the UK on here. Which isn't great, let's be honest, but it's tolerable. And doesn't detract and kind of works with the album. And when it came in the 80s, it gives it that slightly 80s LA metal vibe to it. I think it helps with that. But this is just one of the greatest opening tracks of all time, Into the Lungs of Hell. What instrumental as well. I mean, that takes some balls to start with an instrumental. But when it's as fucking magnificent as that is, then, yeah, go for it. Set the World Afire, another fucking great tune. Then you've got Anarchy. Mary Jane, one of my favourite Megadeth tunes of all time. I just love the structure of it and where it goes. And I just think it's a magnificent song. Side B starts off with 502. Then, possibly my favourite Megadeth tune of all time, In My Darkest Hour. Again, breathtaking, but then a proper 1-2 fucking assault at the end of it as well, with Liar and Hook in Mouth. It's just fucking fantastic. And I nearly rated this higher than 3rd, but I think when you see what's coming, you will find that 3rd, well, I find that 3rd is justified. So my number 3 from 1988, Megadeth's So Far, So Good, So What. My number 2, and before I show you this record, I will say that on first listen, I was a little underwhelmed because the production felt quite flat. But once you get past that and you get hooked by the songs on this, there's no going back. And I think this is almost joint first for me for 1988. It is an absolutely monstrous piece of work. And I think it's his best possibly. Anyway. It is Danzig's debut. Yes, original press. Absolutely magnificent. Just all killer, no filler. Just a breathtaking record. I had heard, and again, this was because of Metallica's influence, and the aforementioned Garage Days EP from the last year when they covered some Misfits songs, and I discovered the Misfits through that. I got a ropey old copy of Earth AD, if I remember rightly, which I've still got of back there somewhere, and got into it that way. And then I'm sure it was probably something as daft as I saw James Hetfield wearing a Danzig t-shirt. Thought, what's that? Discovered that it was a guy from the Misfits. Right, I'm going to get that. I think I'd seen Mother on fucking Raw Power or the Power Hour or whatever it was, Headbangers Ball, and thought, yeah, that's a pretty decent tune. And then went out and got this, like I say on first listen, a little underwhelmed because the production's quite flat on here. It's not really heavy in any sense. It's like a bluesy rock record in places. But then, once you give it some time, fucking hell, what a record. And yeah, my number 2 from 1988, because this is a faultless record. Now, I'm about to explain my number 1. That is a record that does have 1 or 2 slight faults on it for me. But it's still magnificent and a justified number 1. But yeah, fabulous record. My number 2, Danzig's self-titled debut. My number 1 from 1988. And I can imagine most of you know where this is going. But it is Death's second album, Leprosy. I mean, where to start? This was my first experience of death metal. This was the first thing I heard that was truly death metal, and I was hooked from that point onwards. It was all about extreme metal at that point. I heard this in 1988. Me and my bro bought it on cassette from DMC, Disco Music Centre in Morecambe yet again. That's where we got all our formative years stuff. Just magnificent. Again, all 8 tracks on this record are just stunning. Death metal masterpieces. I say there's some problems with it. They quite frankly weird snare drum sound, which I find kind of likeable in a comical way. It's just I don't think there's any coincidence that drum sound hasn't ever seen the light of day on any other death metal or any other record for that fact since, because it's just plain odd and overbearing. It's an overbearing drum sound. But the tracks are that good that you can sort of look past that, really. What else is overbearing on this record? And it seems weird, I'm describing my number one, but I'm going into its faults, but it's because I know it so well. The other thing that I've always had trouble with was Rick Ross's fucking whammy solos. Now, hear me out. One or two work great, and he's not the first to use whammy fucking shenanigans on death metal records. However, when you essentially play the same solo on all 8 songs, it tends to grate a little bit, to the point of where you think, can he do anything else, this lad? When you listen to the Massacre album, From Beyond, that I would also go so far as to say one of the most overrated albums of all time. I like it, but it's overrated. Anyway, that's a question for another time, and will probably get mentioned in the 1991 video, wasn't it? Was it 91 that come out? It just does the same thing again on the Massacre record. So a kind of one-trick pony, I think, would be, and it's not a particularly good trick either. But besides all that, this album is a straight-up masterpiece. 10 out of 10, all killer, no filler. And my favourite from 1988, because not only, as I've just explained, but also it was the light bulb moment that got me into death metal and extreme metal. It was this album, and I've never looked back. So my number one from 1988 is Leprosy by Death. Oh, I dug out the, I've got the original, was this like second press or whatever? Anyway, the first issue of the picture disc. So I just thought I'd show that off. Other albums that I've got in the collection that very, very nearly made it into this. Now, ones that I haven't got in the collection, I'll discuss first, and I made a note of. Queensryche's Operation Mindcrime, 1988. An album that I have never really given enough time to. It wasn't on my radar back then. Some friends honestly never stopped banging on about it, but weirdly, I just never caught up with it. It was one of them where I thought, I should probably give that the time of day at some point. I never have, until fairly recently, where I'm now discovering its qualities. It's like, yeah, I get it. I still don't know it as well as, you know, a lot of other people and a lot of friends that honestly tell me it's one of the greatest records of all time. And I need to try harder, but yeah, that's why that's not on my list, because I don't know it well enough, quite honestly. And I know that sounds like travesty, but Bathory's Blood, Fire, War come out. Yeah, that were another cracker. Not as good as the album before it, but decent anyway. So, another one that didn't quite make the list. This, Testament's Finest Hour for me. That also very close, but didn't quite make the list. And it's a great album. But yeah, just with the 6 that I named, I couldn't find a place for this. So, yeah, Testament, close but no cigar. Another one that was close but no cigar. My favourite Voivod album, Dimension, Hatros, however you pronounce it. Love this record, love it, and I love Voivod, what they do. There's no band that's really ever sounded like them before or since either. Just a cracking record. So yeah, Voivod didn't quite make it. Napalm Death didn't quite make it. They've done better records than this. I say didn't quite make it. It was probably, even if I had a top 10, this might have only just sneaked in, but still. I mean, the opening track on this, Evolder's one, is it? Which is unlike anything Napalm Death have done before, maybe since, but anyway, yeah, that was the one that grabbed me off of this record. But yeah, again, didn't make my top 6. There were probably loads of others that you're screaming at your screen thinking, you've forgotten this, Kris, and why haven't you mentioned that? Too many to mention. But those are just a quick one, so I was going to rattle off. Time for my glaring omission. And my glaring omission from 1988, I've mentioned the Big Four previously, so you kind of know where I'm heading with this one. But the one that doesn't make it is Anthrax's 1988 album, State of Euphoria. Possibly should have been called State of That Fucking Artwork, because what the fuck is that about? And it doesn't get any better on the back sleeve either. Now, I think that picture there is half of the reason why Anthrax probably never got taken seriously in their formative years, really. Because of that. I mean, it's a skater look. I appreciate that. You know, and it's the crossover look. They were clearly going for that kind of crossover, DRI, Gangrene kind of skater boy vibe thing. But Anthrax sort of took it to another level, and an almost sort of comically bad level sometimes, with the big fucking Daft Bermuda shorts and all that stuff. And I think that was clearly a record label marketing thing where, like, that could be your look, right? Let's go fucking, let's do it on 11 kind of thing. And I think it hindered them. I never understood what that daft fucking thing was. If we're talking about bad mascots, you've got Eddie on my number 5 on Iron Maiden album. Then that fucking, whatever the fuck it's supposed to be. It was a terrible idea as a mascot, and thank fuck it didn't survive. Now, I feel like I'm firing into this record. One of my favourite Anthrax songs of all time is on this, and that is is it last track on side A? Yes, Who Cares Wins. I think that's a really mature song. I think it's just a cracker. I really, really do. And sometimes I think when you listen to bands' albums, you can hear, I think there's a giveaway track on an album that you know what the next stuff's potentially going to sound like. Not with all bands, but with a lot of them. You can sort of hear where they're going to evolve to. You can also hear on albums which song they probably wrote first for it, because it sounds most like the previous stuff. And I like listening out for things like that. And Who Cares Wins, to me, sounds like the track that gives a hint of what was coming next, and it was the album Persistence of Time that follows this, which, for me personally, is an infinitely better record than this. I think there's some great songs on it. There's Be All End All, Outside Out of Mind, Antisocial, which is a cover, which I don't mind. Who Cares Wins, like I say. Schism's on here, that's pretty good. My problem with this record is it peters out. I think it starts reasonably strongly and then just tails off to the point where I don't tend to put side B on that often. Now, you could argue that with Anthrax, that they're a band that do that. Be All End All is a terrific example. You've got that phenomenal, and you've got Anthrax start songs magnificently, but then they go into that god-awful the fucking thing that they used to do all the time that drove me mad. And Be All End All is a classic case of that. Starts really, really strongly, strong chorus, daft fucking Anthrax riff for the verse and so on. But anyway, so that's why that is my glaring omission for 1988. Right, 23 minutes. Let's fucking wrap this up. I was hoping to get this done in under 20, but didn't happen. Okay, next Monday, I don't think I'm going to be... I'll be just back off of my GODTHRYMM tour, but we're getting back at the fucking crack of dawn on Monday morning, I think. So it is unlikely that I will be compos mentis on Monday at all at any point. So there might not be a video next week, but I'm looking forward to doing 1989, because as I alluded to in the previous video, these get fucking tougher and tougher to pull into a top 6 as the next few years come. So, anyway, thanks for the few subscribers. I think I'm 1 or 2 off 200, at which point I'm probably going to have to do a competition, aren't I? So, the Yorkshireman in me doesn't want to have to buy things for people, but I know how this works. So, anyway, if we get to 200, we're there. Until then, thank you for liking, thank you for subscribing, thank you for watching, and I will see you maybe in 2 weeks. I'll see what I can do, but until then, cheerio.